Hi, I'm Dr. Catherine Dean from the University of East Anglia, and I'm going to look today at the challenges in doing practical research, particularly in labs. We did a survey of lab accessibility where we recruited scientists with an interest in lab access. We had 152 respondents, just over half of whom were disabled themselves, and 93% of them had experience of working in a lab. Others were people like equipment manufacturers and so on, and most were based in the UK. Biology and biomedicine did dominate, and most of the labs were based in university or healthcare settings. Those with disabilities usually had invisible impairments. Unfortunately, the survey results are unsurprising and summarised really in this quote: "My lab broke me. I hope others are better." The survey results, as I say, are unsurprising, but were far worse in numerical terms than even I had expected. But in summary, the structural access to buildings and labs is poor. Behaviour, attitudes and knowledge is poor. Initiatives to change ableism are tokenistic and ineffective. Web pages and conferences are often inaccessible. And all of this poor access leads to poor safety, poor unlawful practices, poor recruitment and poor retention of staff. We created a suite of access guidelines informed by these survey results and by using guidelines that are already in existence to try and inform people as to what they ought to be doing in terms of lab accessibility. But actually, a lot of the guidance is relevant for the majority of other settings. But where should we go from here? We know it's bad. We knew it was bad before the survey. The survey just emphasised exactly how bad it was. We should now set really ambitious targets. So for behaviour, some of these can be done immediately. Some may take a bit of time to develop them, but within 5 years, we should have personal emergency evacuation plans and lone working plans being audited and checked that the right people have them, because we found that there was a very low proportion of people with the disabilities that needed these have them, which is scary. We want reasonable accommodations passports to be implemented and placed in part of the annual review process so that everybody, yes, everybody, is asked about what do you need to work well at the moment. Do you need flexible working? Do you need part-time working? Do you need other accommodations in your working environment to optimize how you work and how you practice? We need to normalise reasonable workloads and flexible working. These are not unreasonable requirements, and they are often key to disability access. We need to improve training, allyship and bystander intervention training, and we need to make sure that simple things that people can do, like all staff taking responsibility for reporting faults on, for example, the lifts, the powered doors, the hearing loops, etc. The equipment needs to be maintained to be effective, so we need to make sure that everybody takes responsibility for ensuring that happens. We need to recognise that disability is a societal construct and has impact, and the bias that is resulting from that has impact on individuals with disabilities. So we need to provide them with mentorship so that they can progress through their careers in an appropriate manner. We need to make things much more visible. Access hackathons, disability pride events. Let us be out loud and proud. We need to make sure that people have access to external advocacy expertise, not just for solving work issues, but also for accessing the other societal support processes such as PIP or access to work, etc., which is complex, difficult, and increasingly adversarial. So we need, as employers, to make sure that people with disabilities have access to support to navigate these often complex processes. Immediate targets within structural lab access issues. are things like we've got the guidelines, so we should state that new builds and refurbishments should be made to those guidelines. That should be the new standard. The same for new equipment being bought, and not forgetting where you place it and how you can access it. We need to make sure that every building can be evacuated in the event of fire, irrespective of the level of mobility or other disabilities that people have. So we need evac chairs or appropriate alternatives. We need to make sure that hearing access is improved, and this is simple stuff like providing microphones, PA systems and portable hearing loops in any meeting room and making sure everybody uses them. Putting things like Ewan's Guide red cord cards onto all of your red cords in your accessible toilets really does immediately stop them being tied up and allows them to be accessible and usable. And basically, grab a pot of paint and stop your toilets from being white boxes. Put some colour contrast into them. It really improves their visual access. In 5 years, for structure and equipment, I would like for funders to start to require minimum access standards for you to be eligible to apply for funds from them. And that these should include mandatory training and audits of processes like the PEEPs and lone working practices that really prove that you are taking this seriously and implementing stuff. Now, what sort of minimum standards would we require? Well, things like an accessible toilet in any building that actually has standard toilets in it. Now, we should really be looking to make sure that fire alarms are dual alert, visual and audible. That equipment that is purchased meets connectivity standards, that those connectivity standards are agreed so that a centrifuge can talk to a computer that has text-to-speech software, speech-to-text software, so that somebody who cannot press those buttons can still control that centrifuge. We need to improve hearing technology standards. There's a lot of Betamax VHS type conflicts and clashes going on in hearing technology at the moment. We need to push for standards that solve that. We need to make sure that basic ergonomics are achieved in seating, lighting, acoustic environments. We need to make sure that key routes have light doors and are step-free. We need to make sure that all the taps are lever taps and all the handles are D-type handles so that they are genuinely accessible. And ideally, we would like to state that you should have a changing place accessible toilet. This is a large accessible toilet with a hoist and a bench within 20 minutes roll of wherever your workplace is. So that can be within a different building, but close by. And then within 10 years, I'd like to have maximum access requirements being necessary for funding. In other words, not the minimum standard. I want you to be aspirational. I really want to start to say, unless it is really highly accessible, we should not be funding it. We should not be funding research to be held within that building. We should disinvest and repurpose buildings that cannot be made accessible and move them away from active use as research bases and maybe turn them more into admin or bluntly just demolish them. Where possible, we need to install fire-safe lifts and make sure that all fire exits are step-free. I acknowledge there's going to be a few cases where this cannot be done, but most of the time it can. We want most routes, not just the major routes, the most routes to have light doors and be step-free. We want the changing place accessible toilets to be within 10 minutes roll of wherever it is you're working. And we want to start looking at the really challenging aspects of field work, access in boats, planes, etc., etc., so that we really look at how research is done in all of its settings and ensure that it's as accessible as possible. Yes, there is a huge burden on them to really start to change the culture and to start to change how they fund and what they fund. We want flexible deadlines. Deadlines are often really challenging with disabilities, and we want you to start thinking about, are those deadlines, do they really need to be so fixed? And do we need to give greater time, lag between announcements and when the deadlines are. We need to think about flexible duration, whether this is of grants or studentships or otherwise, whether it can be done full-time, part-time, and what extensions can be provided. We need to think about flexible working from home, working online, etc., as well as hybrid working and in person. We need to have flexibility of that. And we need to make sure that flexibility of roles, such as having shared principal investigator responsibilities, is really highlighted, encouraged, supported. We must make sure that there is a separate fund for researchers who need reasonable accommodations to be funded, and that there is extensive exemplars given so people can understand what they can expect to get, and that these are fast tracked, that they are very speedily implemented. We need an even more rapid response to research access funds. So within a fortnight, I would want to be able to apply for and get BSL interpreter costs to do an interview with a deaf person who uses BSL that I have not budgeted for within my budgets. But we should be encouraging more and more researchers to have that budget within their standard research grant applications. But we also need to make sure that events are funded to ensure that there is accessible practice around those. And hey, let's give out some prizes and really reward accessible practice. Finally, research design access. Number one thing is to expect disabled participants to take part in any research project that has human participants. Important that that is an expectation and that you expect to accommodate their needs. We need good quality patient engagement, public and patient involvement to really make sure that what you are doing is good, understandable, inviting, inclusive. We need to audit the equality, diversity and inclusion characteristics of researchers and participants. So both sides of the table, we want to make sure we can track whether we are actually achieving a shift in the populations to have a greater inclusivity. We need to make sure that written information is provided in an accessible format. It's simple enough, that the text is clear, that there's large fonts, etc. provided, that we have a section in the information sheet on how we made this project accessible for you. We need to make sure that principal investigators and ethics committees get training in this, so we're not leaving them to flounder, that we are supporting them to change their practice, and we do recognise the complexity and the challenge that this can represent. And we need to budget for this, for the access costs, and put that into the research design. So getting accessible venues, making sure that you are providing BSL, captions, audio descriptions, video, easy read, and that you are paying for the extra expenses of disability such as carers, travel, food, etc. There's a whole bundle of research references there. Because this is a very brief talk, I have also given a list of other talks where I've talked in far longer versions, often as not, around lab accessibility, how to make change, where we can make change in other formats. So the Cultural Access Forum in Norwich is looking at museums and arts, theatre, etc. How you do this, how you say no, etc. And the benefits of being a disabled scientist, because that's not emphasised enough. So thank you to everybody that has funded this work, that I've collaborated with. There's the link to the Access All Areas in Labs research guidelines and my email. Feel free to get in touch. Thank you very much for your time.